Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Soundbites for Immigration Success. We bring you this series so you can get to know your fellow immigration consultant, hear their story and their journey, and perhaps a typical challenge or a win that they might have had, and then hear their advice to you. My name is Monica O'Brien. I look after things education and stakeholder engagement at CAPIC, and I'm very delighted today to have Louise Willis. Hi, Louise. How are you?
Hi, Monica. I'm great. Thanks. Yourself?
I'm good. Louise, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you, or what was your entry into the profession like?
Oof. Timing's actually great, Monica, because this year, 2026, it marks actually 25 years since I would say I started in the profession. Back in 2001 is when I actually started working within the immigration slash relocation industry. A bit of an interesting story. Prior to this work, I was actually working on cruise lines, and I was in the Caribbean and Hawaii and the Far East and a little bit all over. And I had been looking for a job back on land, as it were. So I actually accepted a position in Manchester in the north of England. And so when I did move there, all my colleagues were like, okay, so you're telling us you left the Caribbean to come and work in Manchester? And they couldn't quite get their heads around it. But that's what I did. And that's how I started. I started, back in the days, obviously immigration took a long time. And so I would help with the relocation side of things. And after about a year or so in Manchester, I moved back to Montreal and started working for a firm here in Quebec, and that's when I then got more onto the immigration side. I started working as a case manager, etc., up until I got my actual license in 2008.
Wow, so we were speaking just offline before we started, and you were saying you sort of fell into the profession. It kind of found you rather than you finding it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the story of so many colleagues because it was it was prior to really people thinking of taking it up as a profession, whereas now, of course, we've got, very well respected courses at the University of Montreal and
Yeah.
Queens, and with people heading into the profession right out of their university degree. So it's very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and for me, it kind of, I would say it fell into place because, my background, like I studied anthropology at McGill, so I've always been interested in other peoples and other cultures. And, I was fortunate enough to be brought up in like various countries around the world and, ranging, I did my schooling in England. My family lived in West Africa for a while. Obviously, we in Quebec as well. But the funny part of my story is that we moved from Jamaica, where I was born, to Quebec, to Jonquière. So we moved from the Caribbean to Quebec in the wintertime, I believe. And so we kind of always look back on that story as, my gosh, like how we ended up here in Canada. Um, I always used to use as an example too, tying into immigration and citizenship, is that, I always say that I'm one of those people who has managed to acquire three citizenships through the three different pathways. So one, birthright, being born in Jamaica; second, British, because my parents are both British; and third, Canadian, because I became a naturalized Canadian just in my 20s. So after graduating from university is only when I became a Canadian citizen.
So you can understand the goals of your clients who are seeking opportunities and pathways, not only for them but their children, because you yourself see the opportunities that open up when you have the ability to travel and work in other jurisdictions. Because as we know, immigration today is changing fast all over the world with the challenges and the opportunities, and never before has it been more challenging. I guess that leads us into our next question, and I want to ask you what a has been your biggest challenge, or what for you is really challenging, perhaps now or in the past, and what are you doing to tackle it?
I mean, the biggest challenge has always been, the changes that happen with immigration and how we just have to roll with it. Again, back in the day, we all applications were paper, so we'd be submitting everything to the High Commission in London, for example. PR applications would take about 4 years to process, first come, first serve, there was no express entry or anything like that. And, then there were changes as, let's say, the federal skilled trades class came into existence. And, actually one of the first clients to be approved in there was one of our clients, which was always fun. And then, we had the occupation lists and we had the caps. And then January 2015, express entry came in, and I always remember that as a period of, potentially being close to a nervous breakdown because if we think the portals are bad now, holy moly, let's rewind to the beginning of 2015 when express entry and creating profiles was just an absolute nightmare, when applications would just disappear, and then having to also manage a number of applications that at the end of 2014, again, anyone who was working at that time will remember when, in fact, applications or occupations were capped, but immigration didn't advise anyone. So we kept submitting applications right up until, I remember distinctly, December 23rd, submitting my last application before running out to catch my flight to go away for Christmas. And having to then deal with all these returned applications, which are out of our control. So it's trying to roll with all of the changes. I mean, the last couple of years have just been insane, and having to keep on top of everything, having to keep on top of dealing with immigration's technology, the portals, and the challenges that those face. And just, yeah, really keeping on top of everything, I would say. The stress, the worry is always there. I don't think this is a job where you can not have stress or worry. It can be difficult to manage sometimes. But, I think we've all lost sleep over our clients. We're worrying about our clients. We're worrying, will their applications be approved? We're stressing about deadlines, and, but we're also celebrating with them because, to this day, an application gets approved. There's still a punch in the air. There's still like, yay, hurrah, like it's the application's being approved. I don't think that ever goes away. That's part of the job. And that's why, we work with people, so we're along with them on their journeys for immigration, the good and the bad, because they're not always good, and that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, is that when things don't go to plan, is having to manage them and deal with them. Not just the paperwork, but the people, the families that we're helping.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and I think even today, back when we were back in the earlier days, it's probably even more stressful now because of the large number of programs and the lack of control that we have. We used to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody or have direct email, but now it's so impersonal, and we're really at the whim of the of Chinook or the triage system or whatever may be out there.
Yeah.
And something you said resonated with me. You sort of live and die with your clients a little bit, and you really have to develop a little bit of a distance. And it's hard sometimes because we were just talking offline. Talking about work permits that take 7 months, and when the decision doesn't go that way, they're out of luck. What's the next step? And you have that thing in your gut, and like, how do I tell my client they're really counting on this? So what kind of distance have you developed? Like, how do you protect yourself a little bit in those instances?
To be honest, I still find it very difficult because, it's you always develop a relationship with the client, so you know them, and you know their situation, and you know how heartbreaking it is going to be for them. And I do find it hard to manage even to this day, except for the fact that I know the decision is not mine, right? We always know the decision is with Immigration Canada. It's not my decision. And so that's the only way I can always, I would say feel better, is that, I'm not the one that refused the application. I know that I submit a good, strong application, and ultimately the decision is not mine. But it's also, I think, the way we manage it afterwards is that, not, you can't be afraid to tell the client. I'm always being, blunt and honest with the client, as we all are, but just to make sure that, listen, I can't sugarcoat it. This is what's happened, and here's a solution that I propose. So just making sure that there's always some sort of solution for them, present the alternative so that the client themselves can make their decision about what is best for them, for better or for worse, because it's not always, it doesn't always involve Canada, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I guess, our job has become more than ever, a strategy driven.
Yeah.
A plan A and a plan B, and if plan A doesn't work out, we might have to go to plan B. And I guess, as you say, it comes down to those client expectations and counseling them appropriately. And I guess that takes me into the third question. Um, Unless you want to talk about a particular win or a celebration that you have.
Oof, I mean, over the years, there's so many, unfortunately, the ones that tend to stay with me more are the ones that were not successful, because the ones that I know, like, were challenging cases and sometimes just did not go to plan. And the client always knew that was a possibility, right? But there are some that really, uh, you know, often through no fault of their own, whether it's, a medical emergency that happened that rendered the person therefore ineligible, or inadmissible rather, or just awful family situations that have happened during the processing. Um, I would guess the ones that do, for the successes that stick with me, oddly enough, tend to be the pro bono files that I do. So, I do a few over the years, and they tend to be more challenging files, but they also tend to be, for a clientele that just don't have the means to pay for assistance. And so I'll always do what I can to try and help. And those have always been the most rewarding, again, because they are the most challenging, and those are always the biggest wins.
Thanks, Louise. I agree with you. Sometimes it's those cases that bring us the greatest joy. And I guess we'll wind up with what advice might you have had to a younger Louise, or advice to somebody who's just entering the profession? Perhaps they've just passed their exam or they're ending their program. What advice might you have for them?
I mean, the main ones that I have are, volunteer, network, learn the process from A to Z. So, when you're preparing an application, make sure you know what you're doing. Definitely, I'd always say start at the bottom. I mean, I did, I started doing, working on the applications, helping, assisting and preparing them so that I knew exactly how everything worked, in order to know how to prepare a file. I mean, experience always, hindsight is great, and it's all to get the experience is what's going to make somebody a really good consultant. What I found really helped me was, apart from my work, is that I did volunteering, and so I did volunteering from both a personal and a professional perspective. So, for example, professionally, we've worked with the Irish Canadian Immigration Centre. We're based in Toronto for years now, probably going on 15 years or so, where, we've become a resource for the Irish community across Canada, whether it's through giving seminars. We used to do cross-country in-person seminars, from Vancouver to Toronto. We'd go to Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary. It was super fun, but it was also really great in getting to work with those communities. And also now, like, I do a legal clinic for them on a monthly basis, where people, just will be able to ask me questions, ask about their situation. So that networking wise has been amazing professionally, but then also personally, I did volunteer with a refugee organization here in Montreal for also a good 10, 15 years or so. I didn't do that for professional reasons. I did it because I just was, genuinely interested in being able to help new arrivals here in Montreal. But that did, of course, lead to, sitting on their board and by sitting on the board of, a respected refugee organization in Montreal, that also increased my network within, I would say, the professional and immigration community here in Montreal, and also, across the country too. So I would definitely say volunteer, network, get involved too with your local chamber of commerce. If you're from a particular, country or culture, see what chambers exist for you. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, and of course, added to that is your work that you've done with CAPIC. You've been a volunteer at CAPIC, a member of CAPIC
Absolutely.
since you got your license.
Yeah,
And I mean, obviously, you built your network, but you've made great friends. And your friends have developed into a biweekly or monthly coffee club where you get together and
for
you
sure.
share cases and talk about the profession, but talk about life too.
Absolutely. I mean, being a CAPIC member obviously has been huge because not only do we get this professional network where we can bounce cases off each other, and we all have our specialties, but definitely, I have lifelong friends now within the CAPIC community and also within my other networks. So it really has been hugely beneficial on both a professional and professional basis.
Yeah, and of course, at the end of the day, we want those newest in the profession to take advantage of what's around them. And I really love your advice, especially that might be pertinent to their culture or career. I think it was who I was interviewing, Tim, and Tim talked about, if you're an engineer in your country, consider going to, engineering conferences and, you can do things like that. There's all kinds of different ways to leverage the network and get your name out there.
Definitely.
Well,
Oh, and one more thing. Have printed business cards because a lot of the neuro consultants, they don't necessarily have a business card. I've noticed that, but you know what? If you're out at a networking event these days, honestly, have a business card or just have them always in your bag or pocket because the number of times you'll meet somebody, they find out what you do and they'll be like, "Oh, do you have your details?" And you know what? There's still nothing better, I think. Give them a nice business card. They'll always
yeah,
yeah,
lots of people do it through their phone right now, but
yeah,
there's something still tangible about having that little piece of cardboard in your hand.
absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I mean, they might get shoved into coat pockets, but at the end of the day, it's a piece. I think it's a good piece of advice, at least in 2026. Louise, it's been a delight to have this conversation with you. Um, just a funny little story. The first time I met Louise was
Oh,
sh
uh-oh.
she was taking the Seneca course prior to writing her exam, and I was the TA for the webinar component, and she was one of my students. And what an amazing student that she was as well. And here we are. Now I'm interviewing you.
That's true. Crazy.
Uh,
2007, that must have been.
yes, it was a long time ago. Um, any final words that you have, Louise, before we wrap this up?
No, just honestly, thank you, Monica. Thanks for everything. And, I'm so glad still to be a part of CAPIC and to be part of the huge network. And I'm so glad you're still there at CAPIC and that we're able to have this conversation and reflect on the past 25 years.
Yeah, well, congratulations on 25 years. That's such an accomplishment for a woman who's only 26 years old.
I tell you.
It's been such a pleasure, and we hope you and our audience enjoyed getting to know Louise today, and we look forward to having you back again. Thanks, Louise. Take
Great.
care.
Thanks so much, Monica. Take care. Bye bye.